very sad day in our lives, in the lives of all connected with Yeshiva College, all connected with Yeshiva Taratzion, and all connected with the Torah world, as we mourn the passing of a true giant who passed away at the age of 82 years old, and who made an indelible mark, not only on so many of our students who attended Taratzion, be it MTA, be it the students who continued, be it the Rabbi Tanzer and so on, who are becoming great Talmidei Chachamim, who are under the influence of Rabbi Aharon Lichtenstein, the whole world. Let me put it this way. Rabbi Aharon Lichtenstein represented a giant in the world of religious Zionism. In other words, he was part of the world you call Mizrahi, Ben Akiva, etc. And in that world, he was outstanding. He was an icon. He was such an icon, recognized across the entire world. In other words, you didn't have to be a Zionist to recognize that Aharon Lichtenstein was a Gaon. He was so recognized by across the spectrum. And one of the great Rosh Yeshivas in Israel was one to say, this is the giant, this is the Gogol of the religious Zionist world. And you know, he was the man who was born in Paris during the war. His parents came to be brought to America as a child. And Rabbi Aharon Lichtenstein, you see, Le Posak Purim Yiseh. It was all about Torah. He was very close to Rabbi Soloveitchik, as you would know, and therefore he believed in university education as well. And he actually had a higher degree in English literature from Harvard University. But his life was Torah. His life was Torah. It was through Torah that he approached everything else, to the very last days of his life. I had the privilege in 1967, when the Six-Day War ended, was our first visit to Eretz Yisrael. In 1967, we had Gush Etzion was just being restored, reclaimed. You know, the Jordanians killed in 1948, 49, they killed everyone who was a Har Etzion, and some of their children returned in 1967 to stop. And there was a small Beis Medrash, a very small Beis Medrash. I remember standing there, small Beis Medrash, which was to become Har Etzion. But it's a long way off from then. That was in 1967. Rabbi Lichtenstein, let me tell you this, he was not only the Talmud Muvak of Rabbi Soloveitchik, the legendary Rabbi Soloveitchik, he was also his son-in-law. His son-in-law, his confidant, his closest student. And he was the heir apparent. In other words, it was assumed in the United States that Rabbi Lichtenstein would be the next Rabbi Soloveitchik. He would be the head of Yeshiva University. And then to everyone's surprise, they couldn't believe it. You know what he did? He turned around and he announced, I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. That's where I want to live. That's where I want to raise my children. That's where I want to be. And at the invitation of Rabbi Vital, who was a wonderful human being, who invited Rabbi Lichtenstein because he wanted that extra dimension of godless Torah. He wanted a scholar greater than he. And a great sacrifice. He invited Rabbi Lichtenstein. Together they built the majestic, magnificent Mochel Torah, which is Har Etzion, which many of you have seen, many of you will see, and many of your older siblings, etc., have attended. A real Kiddush Hashem. Let me tell you this, as you might know, when you talk about a person being a giant in Yiddishkeit, it has to be not only a giant in learning, not only a genius in learning, obviously a genius because most people wouldn't know that much, but at the same time, decent, sensitive, human. In other words, a supermensch. A supermensch. Anyone who used to daven in the shul in Baka for decades and would see how Rabbi Lichtenstein looked after his blind father, Dr. Jekyll Lichtenstein, how he stood with him, davened with him, walked with him. I'm still talking about it today. They're still talking about it today. The honor he gave his mother, the honor he gave all people. The honor he actually gave because he was in fact, he represented Drocher Dachinon. You know, when a man is that big, he has opinions. And he has strong opinions. But his opinions were said quietly and moderately. Rabbi Lichtenstein never spoke out in public and took a public stand except on an issue that he thought involved Chil Hashem, which did happen in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and he did it. A sole voice and a loud voice, because he felt something was happening that dare not happen. That was Rabbi Lichtenstein. As I told you, he had a doctorate in English, and when he wrote articles in English, most of us couldn't understand them. It was not our English. It was another level of English altogether. Now, speaking personally, you see, Rabbi Lichtenstein's grandfather, he tells, his name was Abchik Schwartz. He was part of the administration of the Tanzer Yeshiva. And Abchik Schwartz had a brother whose name was Avraham Nachman Schwartz, who was the rabbi, the Rov of Baltimore, who passed away in 1937. We're going back a long time. So they were two brothers. Now, Rabbi Aharon Nachman Schwartz in Baltimore was my wife's grandfather. And therefore, Rabbi Aharon Lichtenstein's mother and my mother-in-law were first cousins. And so we had an input. We watched him from afar. And my wife, Marcia, as a young girl studying in New York City at Beis Yaakov in the 1950s, had the privilege of being at the Chag HaSmicha, when they gave Smicha at Yeshiva University, and it was a large crowd of people who got Smicha. One person got Yodin Yodin. One got that special dimension, and that was the genius. That was the man who could change the world. That was that beautiful human being. And so he leaves behind a legacy. When Rabbi Mital wanted to bring Rabbi Lichtenstein into the yeshiva, the committee said to him, you know, we have a principle, we can't have two heads. When you have two people in charge, they fight. They get on each other's nerves. It can't work. And Rabbi Mital, being a giant himself in Midas, you know what he said? In that case, I step down. Rabbi Lichtenstein will be the Rosh Yeshiva. We need him here. And together he came in 1970 and they built this magnificent yeshiva which so many people are enjoying to this day. So my friends, on this day we join Har Etzion, we join Klal Yisrael, we join Eretz Yisrael, and we join the passing of a giant, a global B'Torah. Yehi Zichro Baruch. May his memory be a blessing and inspiration to all of us as it truly will.